Yo, what's up, guys? I'm in a great mood today because I've been posting some clips on TikTok, just some clips of this channel. And there was this one guy who's been watching some of my videos on the TikTok, and he made a little comment today, and he was like, I fucking love this guy. That made me feel good. I was like, man, this guy likes my content. This guy finds me entertaining. This guy finds me funny. He spent the time out of his day to write that comment, say, I fucking love this guy. You know, this channel ain't too big right now, but I'm finally at the point where I'm starting to get a couple of fans, and that makes me happy. That makes me very happy. But it sort of gets me thinking about like parasocial relationships, because I feel like the kind of content that I'm trying to create, where it's just telling stories about my life, talking about my opinions and my view on the world, and be my usual hilarious self. Um, it's basically just begging to create parasocial relationships, because like that's the whole point of this is people watch my content because they enjoy me and they like who I am and my personality and shit. But it sort of makes you think. Sort of makes you think about parasocial relationships. They sometimes get a bad rap. I mean, the word parasite is kind of in the word parasocial relationship. But they're not always a bad thing. And it's generally a pretty sweet deal for the person who everybody's having a parasocial relationship with, because they are giving them an insane amount of attention and stuff, and that relates to money. And so that person's getting money just for being themselves and doing their thing, and that's a pretty good thing. I think the problem is that people, when they envision a parasocial relationship, they envision something unhealthy. They envision like somebody who's obsessed with the streamer, and the streamer doesn't even know who the fuck they are. Maybe they give that streamer like $500 on a stream just so that they can read their message and react to it for like 1 second. And so like they're doing all this work to get like a tiny amount of attention from this person, and this person just has their full attention, and they're obsessed with that person. And that's generally not a good thing. Although I don't know, I would kind of like to have like if there's like a girl, like who is obsessed with me. She has like posters of me all over her room, and she's like stalking me and shit, and I just fuck that girl. Like, bro, I bet that sex would be the most insane sex you could possibly have. I know she'd be freaky as fuck, because she's obviously mentally ill. Um, and she'd be bouncing on that shit like her life fucking depended on it, bro. And that shit would go insane. Like, you'd probably break your dick, but it'd be probably the best sex you could possibly have. Is that wrong? I think that's probably wrong. I probably shouldn't do that. I mean, it's definitely wrong. Or at the very least, it's a fucking retarded idea. It's probably not a good idea for you to sleep with your stalker. Yeah, especially if you're a woman. If you're a woman, female public figure, and you decide to sleep with your stalker, probably not a good idea. I mean, I think that could go wrong. You know, you go wrong if you're a man too, though. I mean, don't let a pretty face fool you. These women are just as evil as the men are. You know, not all female stalkers are like Rose from Two and a Half Men. They can hurt you. They can hurt you. So probably not a good idea. I probably should not capitalize on that fantasy. For the moral and just practical reasons. You know, but a lot of people say that it's wrong to like sleep with your fans. I don't agree with that. Like I don't know, like what's even the fucking point? Like somebody works really hard to be a fucking rock star, and then they can't sleep with all of the women that are throwing themselves at them at the shows. It's like, what's even the point? And then it's even worse if you're like super huge and you're like Drake, or you're like in the fucking Beatles or something, and like all of the attractive young women are your fans. Like, I'm sorry, Paul McCartney, no sex for you. You're too famous. You can't have any sex. And it's like, what are we doing here? And I think the main reason that people say that is because of a power dynamic. But a power dynamic, like lots of relationships have power dynamics. Like I don't think anybody's gonna argue that it's wrong for a guy who makes a good amount of money to date a girl who makes less money than him. I mean, I think generally women want to date guys that make more money than them. Not always, but generally, I think that's oftentimes the case. And you're gonna say, oh, this guy makes $55,000 a year, and he's trying to date this girl that makes $50,000 a year. That's wrong. Can't be doing that. You have to make exactly the same amount of money to the very cent, or else there is a power dynamic there. Or you'll have like a girl. A lot of the time you will see girls who are very attractive. Some very gorgeous women, and they will date guys who are average or maybe even below average, and there's a pretty big power dynamic there. You know, like and I think a lot of the time, honestly, if I'm being for real, a lot of the time, like a gorgeous woman dating a average or below average guy, she's probably doing that so that she can abuse that power dynamic. I think that's not always the case. Sometimes she just likes the guy for his personality or whatever. But a lot of the time, I think that might actually be the case. I mean, I've seen discourse online about talking about like, oh, the hot girl with an ugly boyfriend epidemic. And then you see that shit on TikTok. And honestly, the reason for that might be to abuse the power dynamic, and to control the guy by, showing him like, I'm so much hotter than you. You can't get any, but you can never get a girl like me again. So, you just got to deal with whatever shit I'm doing. And, that's not always the case, but sometimes it is. They will capitalize on that power dynamic. But, just because there is a power dynamic does not mean that that power dynamic is being abused. It's not always the case that it is. And, I think the good thing is just to have respect for your partner. There are sometimes power dynamics at play, but you just have to have respect, and you have to treat the person with respect and dignity and be a good partner. And, that's really what it comes down to. So, there's nothing necessarily wrong with there being a little bit of a power dynamic at play. And I mean, the same thing is the case with, celebrities and fans. But I don't think it's healthy. I don't think it would be healthy for like a celebrity to date a fan, at least like a really hardcore fan. Maybe like a casual fan would be fine, but like a really hardcore fan, probably not a good idea for them to date. I think that probably wouldn't be a healthy relationship. But I don't see why sex should be off the table. I don't see why hookups should be off the table. I don't see a problem with that. I knew this girl. I met this girl on Tinder when I was in London, who was a German girl, and she said that she could not listen to the band Rammstein anymore, which, if you don't know, is like the biggest band in all of Germany. Very big band. They are very popular around the world, even though they sing their songs in German. Um, and she said she couldn't listen to that band anymore because there were some controversy with the guy. Because what he would do is he would have his agents go out and find girls at the show to sleep with him. But these were girls who went to the show, because they, and they were throwing themselves at him, and they wanted to sleep with the lead singer of the biggest band in Germany. Um, and it was like, I don't know, she thought that was wrong. I mean, I don't really see anything wrong with that, as long as as long as it's consenting adults, who fucking cares, bro? You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with sleeping with your fans, as long as you don't abuse that in a bad way. And obviously consenting adults, of course. I mean, I think that goes without saying. And unfortunately, some rock stars from the '70s didn't really hold to that. You got like David Bowie had some allegations about that, or Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. Not good, not good. Steven Tyler, can't have that. Not good. It goes without saying that I condemn that behavior. But sleeping with consenting adult fans, nothing wrong with that. And hopefully, when I get famous, I get the opportunity to do that a little bit. And I will get famous. This channel is going to blow up. But I'm a respectful guy. I'm not going to do anything wrong. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. It's just a little bit of a deep dive. Just a little bit of a commentary on the idea of parasocial relationships. Not always a bad thing. Not always a bad thing. And I hope that when this channel blows up, because it will, I will have many people who have a parasocial relationship with me and give me their time and attention and their money. And in return, I grace them with my genius, sexy, awesome presence. All right, y'all have a good one. Press that like button, smash that notification bell, press that subscribe button. Subscribe to my Twitch as well, and y'all have a good one. Leave a comment too.